2022 was the year I fully committed to following motorsports. I was following so many different series and styles of racing, trying to discover some new favorites. And this led me to make a 10 race list that considered every race series that I watched. Obviously I can only keep up with so many series, but I'm sure I missed some great ones. As far as I'm concerned, all of these here deserve to be watched. No spoilers, these are my top 10 races of 2022. Number 10. The Formula 1 British Grand Prix at Silverstone. While the F1 title fight wasn't close, there were still some fun races throughout the year. Admittedly, two of my favorites were the rain-soaked Singapore and Japanese Grand Prix, as I feel that modern F1 is at its best in the wet, but neither race could compare to the hype that was the British Grand Prix. Of course, many remember this race for its horrific crash on lap 1, where Zhou Guanyu slid down the front stretch upside down, then catapulted into the catch fence, delaying the race for a significant amount of time. While in retrospect, I can say it was a fantastic crash, and Zhou luckily walked away, that was up in the air while the safety crew extricated him from the wreck. This wreck marred the race's score on my top 10, but it was made up for when it became clear that the tire strategy was going to become chaotic. It additionally became more chaotic when a safety car restart blew everyone's expectations out of the water, leading to an amazing 5-way battle for second place and an underdog victory. I've never been happy about the sport's lack of parity, although I'm glad to see more mid-pack racing, but this is the kind of battle that needs to occur in Formula 1 more often. It was an incredible moment, and seeing a victory go to someone who truly earned it was also heartwarming. Number 9. The Extreme E Desert X Prix at Neom. Extreme E is sort of a new kid on the block when it comes to racing, so for those who have never seen it before, think of it like an environmentally conscious rallycross. Now, there are downsides to that, the most particular ones being odd-looking vehicles and terrible electric motor sounds, but the positives outweigh the negatives. Each track is completely different and brand new, and there are multiple lines for each driver to potentially take, as well as different obstacles to maneuver. Now, I'm not sure how environmentally friendly it really is to mark up the landscape with the rallycross event, but it's great fun, and Neom was probably the best event this year. A lot of it comes down to the circuit designed for the drivers. Some of it was sandy, some of it was rocky, and there were significant elevation changes throughout. Additionally, the series uses waypoints instead of set-in-stone tracks, so there was a lot of variety as to where and how the drivers raced each other. The close battling existed throughout the entire event, and they even handled a red flag restart in the fairest way I've ever seen in a racing series. I'm looking forward to watching more of this in 2023. Number 8. The Supercars Bathurst 1000 at Mount Panorama. Many in the racing community already recognize the Bathurst 1000 as one of the greatest races in the world. The allure of driving up and down a scenic mountain pass is both nerve-wracking and rewarding. The way the race began, a lot of us were expecting a bit of a shit show, and to be honest, we kind of got one. The track was wet, which led to a lot of silly accidents, including a particularly controversial one that took out some competitors. But the end of the race came down to two of the greatest Bathurst drivers duking it out in a tense battle to see who could outpace the other while keeping their tires steady. I know I said I wouldn't spoil anything, but I should note that a Holden driver won the race, which effectively became the final Bathurst victory for the now retired automaking legends. Number 7. The IMSA Petit Le Mans at Road Atlanta. I was made aware of this race after the crazy finish last year, but although this year's race ended anticlimactically, it was still a very impressive watch. Road Atlanta has been rightfully receiving more attention these years as a fantastic flowing but difficult track, and the lack of sharp corners makes for more riveting driving, as well as tense passes. The Petit Le Mans, being a multi-division race, leads to a lot of scary passes, especially in the S's and the downhill portion, and it didn't help that multiple drivers were making odd mistakes and penalties early on. It was also cool to see the track transition from day to night, and to top it all off, while the finish wasn't great, there was an amazing plot twist near the end. It was a great race, but not the best Road Atlanta race this year. That goes to number 6. The MX-5 Road Atlanta race number 2. The MX-5 Cup, one of the coolest feeder races around. ran 2 races at Road Atlanta to decide the championship, and it absolutely came down to the wire. For those who don't know, MX-5 is kind of like if you crossed NASCAR with road course racing. These cars are mostly stock, and they can trade blows with each other. The aerodynamics of this race spec are also fantastic, as these cars can pack draft through road courses like a classic Daytona race. It's incredibly close, and as long as you can keep with the front pack, you have a shot at the win. And yet, they do all of this with cars designed for road courses at IMSA's top locations. And Road Atlanta's scary S's and long back straight make for some amazing racing. Now, I don't want to spoil the finish or the championship battle, but let me tell you that the finish was insane, and the title fight came down as close to the wire as you could get. Number 5, the Supercars ITM Auckland Super Sprint number 3 at Pukekohe. This race was bittersweet. Pukekohe, the only New Zealand track on the Supercars schedule, announced that they were no longer going to keep the racetrack open for racing. As such, these final races are likely the last that we'll see from this place. Thankfully, we ended on a thriller. There were some hopes broken, such as a crash on the race start and someone with an abysmal pit road issue. But in the second half, the battles started getting exciting, and eventually, it became clear that the race would go down to the wire. And holy shit did it go down to the wire. We witnessed possibly the best duel the entire year, a wonderful send-off to a great racetrack. Number 4, the MotoGP Australian Grand Prix at Phillip Island. Intensity boiled over in this race, as there were major championship implications on the line. With only 3 races to go, there were somehow 5 drivers still mathematically capable of winning the championship. This race would make or break those title hopes. And in a race of unpredictability, many of the title contenders suffered from major problems. Meanwhile, the racing up front was close, and there were a lot of surprises and big movers. I wish I could talk about the multiple outside storylines that found their way into this race, but all I can say is this. There was Mark Miller hype, an emotional win from a last lap pass, and a surprise podium that led to a heartwarming pop-off. Number 3, the NASCAR Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte. In the middle of this race, driver Kyle Larson received a pep talk from his crew chief Cliff Daniels that more or less summarizes this race.
In the first half, all I want you to remember is how good a TV we made. We went from the back to the front more times than I could count. We hit the wall, we spun out, we literally caught on fire. We are also the most penalized team on pit road in the first half. All that means is that in the second half, already we're going to be starting way better than what we started the first half. We've got to go execute right now. Starts with this pit stop, then it's going to be the restart, then it's going to be whatever comes our way after that. So I don't really know what the hell you're worried about, but I'm fine. The team's fine. Everybody down here is nodding their heads and giving a thumbs up, so let's go.
Despite all of this, he was able to contest for the win at the end of the race. This is a pretty emotional run, but keep in mind that he wasn't the only one to run all over the pack. Everyone had problems keeping it together. What many do not know is that NASCAR introduced a new car in 2022 with more horsepower, making generic oval tracks very competitive. This essentially revitalized the Coca-Cola 600, aka NASCAR's longest race of the season. The past few races hadn't been that exciting, which is problematic when the race generally runs for an extra hour. But this race was brought back to glory with multiple spins by driver error, back and forth battling, and a thrilling closing lap charge that eventually led to 2 restarts. This race lasted over 5 hours, which is probably off-putting to newcomers to the sport. But trust me, this NASCAR endurance race was the best in years and is worth your time. Number 2, the IndyCar GMR Grand Prix at the Indy Road Course. The great thing about the Coca-Cola 600 was that all the drivers were treading on a knife's edge of control when intense battling was occurring. At this point in the list, the only way to sharpen that knife's edge is to race in the wet. And in the GMR Grand Prix, not only was it wet out, it was unpredictable. The weather radars were inaccurate in determining when the rain was going to fall, which led to vastly different tire strategies amongst the competitors. There would be drivers who spun out under the yellow just trying to keep their slick tires together, and then the drivers would pit for wet tires, only to find out that the rain had stopped and the track was drying off. I have to particularly shout out Colton Herta for being the first driver in the race to put on slicks, and then follow up with this amazing drift save. There was huge racing, huge strategy, and huge skill throughout, and a rewatch is sure to satisfy any race fan. And that leaves us with number 1, the MX-5 Daytona race, number 1. I think it's clear at this point that I love when drivers with close and tough competition have to face each other in the most delicate of positions, and I don't think this year had a race closer and more delicate than the first race of the MX-5 Cup's 2022 season. I already described how the MX-5 was great for slipstream heavy pack racing, which makes it a sensation at places like the Daytona road course. But this race also ran under the rain. You have these close, contact-heavy, draft-hungry cars racing at Daytona under the rain. This led to some exciting moments, and surprisingly, the drivers were able to keep things together. They even managed to pull off a photo finish on the apron without wrecking each other. It was the best of NASCAR oval racing combined with the best of IMSA road course racing, and I wholeheartedly recommend this be checked out. It's even free to watch on YouTube, so do consider it. I hope that at least one of these races in the top 10 list will be checked out, or even kindle an interest in a new racing series. But of course I missed a lot, so please let me know in the comments your top 10 for the year for any racing series. That's going to be it for this video, and I hope to see you guys soon.